it depends on whether you want to be an author or an illustrator of a children's book. Both are very different, and where you would start with that. If you want to be both, I would recommend starting with illustration. It's definitely the part that takes the longest. And for me, it really was like years of finding the right medium and finding the style I was comfortable with. And because I obviously love writing for children as well. And someday I would love to publish my own book that I've written and illustrated. So for me, I would say if there's somebody that's interested in illustrating, that I would recommend first and foremost, you find the medium that you're most comfortable with, because there's all kinds of options out there.
Hey guys, I'm here with my great friend Meg Chestnut, who is the illustrator of JJ Learns Jiu Jitsu. We're going to talk a lot on this episode of our journey of publishing this book together and to the greater purpose that it serves to inspire and uplift children. Check it out. Meg Chestnut.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
We're coming off of a crazy weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, it was insane.
And then I decided I didn't tell you anything that we're doing today till about 10 minutes ago.
No,
when
you
got
didn't.
here.
No.
How you feeling?
Great.
about that?
Yeah, apparently I'm supposed to get like a debrief, and that went missing. So
yeah, we have this document for guests. Like, here's the show and what we talk about. Oh, there's this card that if you take time to think about things, sometimes you're probably gonna need some time, and I give you no time.
No, but that's okay. We're winging it.
It's all my fault.
It's good.
So we just worked. I mean, how many hours? You spent 600 hours.
Yeah, I logged around 600 hours for this project.
On JJ Learns Jiu Jitsu. Mm-hmm. And as of time of recording today, it came out last week, so about a week ago.
Yes.
And it's been an awesome journey.
It's been amazing. Really cool project to be a part of.
Well, and I didn't even have this on my radar. I mean, we met 6 years ago? No, 6 years ago, was it?
2020.
Was it only 4?
Well, it would have been 2019.
Yeah.
Because we bought our house in 2020.
Okay.
But we met 2019 when we started house hunting.
So who would have thought, right? When we got connected, that we'd be sitting here talking about an illustrated kid's book and all this journey.
Yeah.
Wild.
Never would have called it.
So yeah, take us back. Like how did you get here to where you are? I mean, we're going to dive into the book, and I definitely want to talk about, I think your real estate purchase was just such a cool story when you guys bought your house here.
Yeah. And you walked that journey really closely with us.
Yeah.
That was incredible. So, I mean, I've always had such a passion for children. My degree is actually in psychology, Christian counseling. But I always knew like I wanted to do something with kids, whether it included the degree or not. I've been sketching in sketchbooks since I was little. I've always loved art. It's always been like a channel for me. I would say I started dabbling in like the illustration bit of it maybe in 2017, I think was when I bought like my first like sketch tablet.
Okay.
I've long had like a dream to kind of bring to life my stuffed bunny when I was little and kind of like write a collection of stories that included him and me as a kid, and kind of teach children through their eyes.
Yeah.
So that's where it started. And I did a lot of like sketching and dabbling in different mediums and stuff like that. We met you in 2019 when we were ready to buy our first house, my husband and I.
And we met through Chris. Did you meet Chris first and then Chris introduced us?
Yeah,
Okay.
Chris Holcomb.
Yeah? What's up, Chris? Shout out to Chris. And then we went on that journey together. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that was amazing. Yeah, so we were living in a little apartment and ready to buy our house. We were expecting our first. So I was, I think when we bought the house, I was like 26 weeks along. So when we met you, I was pregnant with Raylan.
Yes.
Yeah.
So crazy.
Yeah, and that was crazy. We looked at so many houses, and there was one that we looked at the day it went on the market. And I remember they came and like put the for sale sign in the yard as we were there. And we walked in, and Nick and I both just fell in love with it. And
that was
it. That was it.
Yep.
Yeah. And we put an offer on it that day with you, and they accepted a different offer, and we were brokenhearted, but we were the backup offer. And we kept looking at houses with you, and nothing, like we were just comparing everything to that house. You know, nothing added up to like that feeling. And then, let's see, it was 2 days before that first offer was supposed to close on the house.
It was Super Bowl Sunday. I remember
Yes.
watching the Super Bowl. The Broncos
Yep.
were playing, I think, right? Was it Broncos?
I think Seahawks, because I was wearing a Seahawks jersey.
I just remember I got the call.
It might have been Seahawks and Broncos. But yeah, it was Super Bowl Sunday.
Yep.
We were at my in-laws and you called and you were like, hey, the buyers backed out like 2 days before closing.
Because it was going to close Tuesday.
Yeah.
They said, do you still want it?
And yeah, you were like, it's yours because you were the backup offer. And we just, oh my gosh, it was like one of the best days. You know, me with all my like pregnancy hormones, I was just like bawling. So yeah, like that was such an incredible moment of God's provision and his faithfulness, because that journey was so emotional, you know, and we'd gone through the holidays looking at houses with you, and, you know, baby was coming and we were like, we really need to find a house. And of course it was 2020. So then
And it was crazy then.
COVID hit. Yeah. And so we ended up closing on the house February 3rd. Yeah, that year. And so we moved in like just before all the craziness of COVID hit. So,
And I think in that process, that's when you just started to share your illustrations, some of the work you had done. And then weren't you going to take that you were going to do an illustrated kids Bible series, right? Weren't you in a conversation with a group or somebody about that, right?
Yep. And I had sent a couple different like samples of manuscripts to publishers, and there were a couple that were interested. I got a couple offers, but you got to really watch out for like, sometimes they're not legit, and I didn't feel right about those ones. Yeah. And so I was just kind of holding out for the right opportunity there. But then, you know, we became homeowners and parents within the same like 3 months. And so.
And they got locked in your house.
Yes. Yeah.
For the next 3.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of the illustration stuff was put on the back burner at that point. And then I kind of reawakened it. Gosh, maybe 6 months later, I started doing like a children's blog where I would write and illustrate like printable devotionals for kids and activities. And so it was like tackling different biblical concepts about Jesus's life that might be kind of hard for parents to describe to kids. And it was so to back up a little bit, I mentioned my stuffed bunny, and that was like, he's like the main character. Me as a little girl comes alongside him. When I was younger, my nickname was Bacon. My little brother couldn't pronounce Megan, and so it became Bacon, which of course
He called you Bacon?
Yes. Which of course my older brothers just loved. You know, they really took advantage of that one. So
do they still call you Bacon
no,
today? No, I didn't hear any of them on Saturday call you Bacon.
No, I think we finally broke that habit. So it's called Bacon and Bunny, and in these devotionals, Bacon and Bunny would be like looking for Jesus Easter morning because the tomb is empty and where is Jesus? That kind of thing. Yeah. And it's like told through their perspective. So it's easier to understand for a child. So I was doing that for months, and sometimes it wasn't about a biblical concept. Sometimes it was about like a significant holiday, like 4th of July. Yep. And that was really cool. Like it was cool to see like subscribers come in and to hear stories about parents that were printing out these activities with their kids and having this little date with them, you know. And that I think is right around the time when you called me. It was Christmas break, which would have been 2022.
Going into 23.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were like, and it was random because we hadn't talked for a while, and you were just like, hey, you illustrate, right? Or do you do your own illustrations? And I said, yeah, I do my own. I'm just kind of doing it like on the side right now. And you said, hey, I have a project in mind and I'd love to connect about it after the first of the year.
And because I was still wrapping up Painted Baby, and then we launched Painted Baby, and that's just where my brain is. Like I'm already on book 4, by the way. Yeah. Like we're gonna do it. Yeah, and then that just started. This would be a great time. Like, how do you start and publish an illustrated kids book? It would be cool just to dive into all the components, because you knew some of it. I knew a little bit about it. And my friend Mike, who's written 11 business books now, one of them was a kid's book. So I got a little bit of info from him.
Yep.
John Holston, who wrote Swimsuit Lesson.
Yep.
He came out, we had coffee one day, and he's like, here's what you got to do. And then we just started.
Yeah, it's quite a process. Yeah. Well, and I think the most complicated thing is that there's so many different routes you can take.
Yes.
to publish, you know, and like, and people ask like, what does that look like? It's like, it could be a completely different journey
Yeah.
for the same, you know, for the same author. If you were to use two separate paths of publishing, like it's crazy. It's a big process.
I went on Fiverr. Did I tell you this or show you the Fiverr drawings that I got back?
You showed me some at the beginning because I remember you reached out. It was like that February or something. And you were like, just randomly, you sent me it was like a sketch and you said, hey, I got this off of Fiverr just as like an idea. And I was kind of confused because I was like, oh shoot, like is he starting the project? Like I hadn't heard anything. And I was like, do I need to give him some of, like, is he looking for some of my work as like a sample of?
Yeah, right. We didn't even talk about it.
I didn't know you, but like, I love that about you. You're always 10 steps ahead. So you were like, hey, here's some sketches from an illustrator off of Fiverr.
And didn't you say, yeah, that sure looks like it was from Fiverr? Because they weren't great. They weren't.
No, they weren't like.
I didn't think, but compared to what you did.
They weren't bad.
They weren't bad.
You know, but like
weren't great.
The illustrator didn't know anything about jiu-jitsu, which I didn't at the time either. But you had even mentioned, you're like they had him in some kind of, it was like a sketch of like two kids and what they were doing. You were like, this is not jiu-jitsu.
Wasn't the girl kicking a boy in the face?
Something like that.
That's karate.
It was something like that. Yeah. And I was like, okay, so I just did a sample illustration for you, two or three.
Yeah.
And I sent them over and it was like, I don't know if I'm like competing with this person or what, but here's an option. And like, I'm still happy to work with you.
Yeah.
Just let me know. And then I think, like we went from there.
We did. Yeah.
Cause it was just the one person off of Fiverr that at least
I only saw. Yeah. Popped on there one day, sent it over. She sent some sketches. They were all right. Yeah. No, but I knew right away when I saw those sketches and we just kind of sat down and talked about the vision. I didn't realize how much of the story is told in the illustrations. Because remember, I brought this big manuscript.
Yes.
Like, Matt, that's like 3,000 words. We're writing this for 6-year-olds. You need to really consolidate this. And then we were able to consolidate it down. So talk about that process. So you gave these like character sketches. Mm-hmm. Here's all the characters we want to have and kind of how they come into the story. Mm-hmm. And then we just started storyboard sketching, right? Didn't you just kind of start sketching out little scenes? Yeah.
So we met for coffee and you showed me kind of the rough, like you said, like the rough manuscript, I think it was like 14 pages and it was like,
it's rough.
This is awesome, but we're writing for kids here. Yes. So then began the process of like, okay, let's go page by page and what we want to see happen. And so, the following months were just a lot of meetings of like, I would come with, like a sheet with 4 boxes and I would just kind of do like a little rough sketch for you of kind of what I saw going on in the scenes and just wanted to like make sure that's what your vision was for it. And we would kind of, go to the board together and be like, I think this needs to happen next. And maybe we take this part out of it. And after we kind of had like a rough idea of the storyline of the book, then I did character pages for you. And so I did and at one point I think I had like 12 character pages pinned up next to my Cintiq tablet, on the wall. And it was just like, this is the character. Here's 3 or 4 different angles of this character. This is why I gave them this, and that. And you really gave me a lot of creative freedom to design the characters and kind of come up with the reasons I made them, how I made them. And there were characters we nixed too. Like there was supposed to be like Big Brother Josh.
JJ was going to have a brother. Yeah.
Yep.
We just decided that didn't bring value in the right way. To
right.
The story.
Yeah.
The way we were going to.
And we had to dwindle it down too. So like there was a whole portion of the story that was taken out. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was. Yeah. And then from there, it was also like refining the manuscript and figuring out what are the exact words that go on the pages. So we spent, it was like 6 months of sketch.
Yeah, it was every other week, just about.
We'd meet up with the sketches. Yep, and then once you approved all of the sketches, that's when I started the illustrating process. So it first was 42 pages of just sketching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then from there, you ended up signing up for jiu-jitsu, right? Didn't you sign up for a couple of months and you came out on the mats to train?
Yeah. Well, it was important to me to know the basics. It was important to me to know what I was sketching and to know the details. Like I wanted a black belt to be able to read the book and be like, that's what we would teach. My husband had dabbled in it a little bit with you, like a year previous. He had kind of started coming in. So I had been like kind of his rolling dummy for a while, but I really had the disadvantage because I didn't know anything. And he was like practicing all these different chokes and stuff on me. And it was like, I need to get on the mats. I need to study this.
Figure this out. Yeah. And then you'd come and hang at kids' class and just watch all the kids. And we did video. I think we even did videos at some point.
Got a couple pictures and studied the kids and kind of their anatomy and trying to figure out, what would be accurate. And, it's funny, a gi fits so differently on a child than an adult. So it was, even just little details, it was important to be there and like watch the kids too. I wanted to do that.
So we get through to a point where, character sketches and storyline, and we're refining everything. And then we threw a couple of special people in there. One for example, was Maria Del Mar, right? Yeah. And we were just trying to get little things about her correct. And I mean, when she saw it, because the three people that I plugged in there didn't know they were going to be in there. And they all do now.
Surprise. Yeah.
Yeah. Mike cried at my house. Ruth Rennie called me. She called me just like last week. Yeah. We were on the phone for like half hour. She, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm in your book. This is amazing. Awesome. Yeah. She loved it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And then Maria came out here and showed it to her. And she didn't say much at first. She kind of took it in and then just sent me this amazing text message after. Yeah. And then we kind of put her on the spot at the party. I'm like, kids,
try to find her.
Maria's here. And they all turn around.
Well, and then she vanished.
Then she left. She took off.
It was so cool to meet her because you had said, hey, I want 3 cameos in this book and I want them to be the teachers. And so that was a really, like you had mentioned that from day one. So it was really important to figure out how do we weave these 3 cameos into the book and how do we apply them to JJ's story. And it means we have to have separate sketches of him in their classroom and everything. And so you'd sent me some pictures of each of them, but that's all I had to go off of. I'm like, I haven't met these people. So I did as best I could off of their pictures. And there were a lot of moments where you're like, oh, that's not, like the hair's not right. The teeth isn't right. Like we need to fix this.
Maria's, that just took time. Mike's was like home run right off the bat.
Yeah. Yeah. That one was pretty quick.
Ruth Rennie's was too.
That's true. It was Maria was the harder one. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's cool. And then I just like, we did some research about like what we wanted their classrooms to look like too. And you'd mentioned like the carameled apples for Ruth's classroom that you remembered as a kid. And
her husband would come in and we'd make candied apples and we put these little, they're called Easter eggs, right?
Yes. So in a children's book, Disney does this a lot in their movies and in books. You'll look for what they call Easter eggs. And so if you're going through the book, like they're like little hidden items in the illustrations that have meaning. So in each of their classrooms, we had these Easter eggs that were like applicable to their character or what they stood for. Like Mike's classroom has like the really unique tree bookshelf that he has in his office. And if you look at the books on the shelf, there's Painted Baby, there's Mike's book, and then there's even JJ Learns Jiu Jitsu on the top shelf. Yeah. And those are
little when we finalized the cover, we then popped it back into the tree.
Yeah.
We're not going to share all the Easter eggs, though. Do you share them?
No. I think it's fun for people to look for and find them. But it was cool to be like just really intentional about every detail. Even like the flag on Miss Maria's wall or just different details that were like true to who they were and the culture they came from or what they stand for. The cameo pages definitely took longer, but they were really worth it.
Are you a small business trying to navigate all of the landscape of digital marketing and don't know where to go? Reach out to one of our sponsors, Imprint Digital. They are the go-to source for all things digital marketing. They are the producers of this podcast, and they run all of the marketing for all of my companies. Check them out at imprint-digital.com. Is the paint or roof on your home or business starting to look a little shabby? If so, reach out to one of our sponsors, M&D Painting and Roofing. M&D Painting and Roofing is a full-service residential and commercial painting and roofing contractor in Northern Colorado. And full disclosure, I'm the M in M&D. Check them out at mndpainting.com. They were totally worth it. Totally worth it. Yeah, love it. So then what going into that process, I mean, you had done some illustrations, you're doing the blog, doing bits and pieces here, but you keep coming back to me. You wrote a really nice note and you're like, hey, thanks for taking a chance on me.
Yeah.
I mean, you took one on me too, right? Because we had never, I mean, we worked together in real estate, but we'd never worked together in this kind of capacity, huge time investment.
Yeah.
How is this all going to work? But just what's going through your mind throughout that process?
Yeah. I mean,
it was a lot. It's a lot of ups and downs and everything.
Yeah.
It was for me.
Yeah. I don't think, like, going into the project, I don't think I definitely didn't realize how long it was going to take. I definitely didn't, because it was my first project of like a book from beginning to end. I had no idea the capacity that it was going to require. And at the time, I had 2 toddlers at home. I've got 2 little girls that are now 4 and 2, but at the time, they were 2 and infant, and then 3 and 1. And, like any mama especially understands, like, those ages are slightly demanding, and
a little bit, yeah, tiny bit.
And I'm a stay-at-home mama too, and so, like, it was really important to me that came first. And so, like, all the hours that I logged with JJ, 95% of those hours was when the girls were sleeping. So it was like taking advantage of nap times or evenings, lots of like late nights with a cup of tea and just trying to stay awake. I definitely, like I said, I didn't understand the capacity of the project when I entered into it, but I also grew to really appreciate the process because, like, I even look back at the original sketches of JJ, and they look nothing like what JJ ended up being. And I remember showing you, because, like, originally I gave him like curly hair. He was a little more pudgy, and
That's right. Yeah, we changed him up quite a bit.
You had approved it, and you were like, yeah, that's great. But it just, like, it didn't sit right with me, that sketch. And so I remember going home that night, and I sketched for like 5 hours to try to get JJ right, because I'm like, I saw him in my head and I just needed to translate him. And so I came in for our next meeting, and I was like, this is not JJ. And I put this one in front of you. And I'm like, I think this is our JJ. And so through the process, like, I learned a lot, I grew a lot, and I actually, like, kind of cringe a little bit when I look at some of my original sketches. I'm like,
we'll have to pull those out and look at those. Yeah,
I know,
they
like,
were totally different.
Yeah. Like, I've got sketchbooks that I filled with brainstorming and different ideas and research that I did. Even just like with the process of Photoshop and how I illustrate it. Like, there was so much that I didn't know at the beginning. And so even though the process and the project itself was, like, it took a lot more than I originally had expected, it was worth it. And I grew a lot and learned so much. And I was really appreciative for the opportunity. Because, like I said, you really did take a chance on me. Like, I did not have anything published to show you. I didn't, like, really all it was me sending those original, like, couple sketches to you as, like, hey, this is kind of my style. I can alter it as you need, but this is what I can do. So
no, and it was just great, and I thought it was really, really cool timing that it aligned with other life events too, because you don't live in Colorado anymore. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I appreciated too is when you laid those out, I'm like, this is like, we're doing this. This is going to be great. But I really appreciate it. It's like, I'm a control freak. For those of you that don't know me, and you came in one day, you're like, Matt, I know you're kind of a control freak, but I took the liberty of, like, not doing everything you just wanted me to do, and I did it a totally different way. And I remember you're like, oh crap. And I was like, that's awesome. Like, do more of that. And I mean, you totally took certain bits and pieces of it where I would get stuck, or I didn't give bad input. It's just, you're like, no, it's going to be better if we just do this. Like, trust me, kind of a thing. And I thought that was really cool. But I remember the first time, you're like, I don't know about.
Yeah, I gotta admit, like, I was a little nervous driving to that meeting. I'm
Nick's like, you're going to do what?
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah, he's like, you sure this is Matt? I don't know how he's gonna. Yeah, I'll admit at that meeting, I was a little bit like, I did not listen to what he had requested. We'll see how this goes. But, like, from day one, like, I really believed in the project. And, I knew the audience pretty well. And there were just some ideas that I had that I was like, I really feel like this would make it a little bit more crisp, or make this, make it flow a little better. And I figured, like, I've got nothing to lose. I may as well pitch it to him and see if he'll go for it. And if not, like, that's okay too. This is like, I'll do whatever, I went into it with an open mind, but I really appreciated that you you took my advice and you did give me a lot of creative freedom. And that you respected my input too. Cause I didn't go into the project expecting to have much input, but I really loved that we came together as a team with it.
And you cameoed and kind of threw some things in there. I don't know if you want to talk about those or not, or just let people find them. But there's a couple things you plugged in there that I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I did. So the first one actually was, and I called you about this when we had talked about designing JJ. We wanted something physically about him that was slightly different, that, you know, maybe would be teased, and you threw in like, hey, let's give him buck teeth, like, you know, because that's part of like your story. And then which, you know, you'd never tell now, but and then my husband and both little girls are on one of the pages. And
gotta find them.
That one, I'm just gonna let people find that one because we've got some of their friends that are reading the book, and I actually just texted the moms this morning, like, hey, have them look for the girls because they're in there. And then I also put my parents and my in-laws just as like a thank you for all of their support over the years. So, well,
and I don't think you told me about that, because when they were here at the party, they're like, we're in the book too. And I was like, okay, sure. And I didn't even know.
Yeah. I had like texted you about it, and you were just like, sure. Yeah. Like do whatever you need to. I don't even
remember that. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So, it's, and there again, like we'll let people find them. For those that know me and my family, like they'll recognize them. But, I had texted you about that. Like, hey, are you okay if I put a couple of my own cameos in? They're really little. They're not teachers in the book. But yeah, you were awesome about that, letting me put a couple of my own bits in there. Yeah.
So if somebody's just starting sketching and they want to, you know, write a kid's book, illustrate a kid's book, like where do you start? I mean, I felt like our stories were just this right place, right time, God's hand is in it. It just all worked out. And I think it served a really cool purpose. We'll get into that. It's serving a really cool purpose, what you guys are doing. But if those conversations aren't there for somebody, like where can somebody just get started?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it depends on whether you want to be an author or an illustrator of a children's book. Both are very different, and where you would start with that. If you want to be both, I would recommend starting with illustration. It's definitely the part that takes the longest. And for me, it really was like years of finding the right medium and finding the style I was comfortable with. And because I obviously love writing for children as well. And someday I would love to publish my own book that I've written and illustrated. So for me, I would say if there's somebody that's interested in illustrating, that I would recommend first and foremost, you find the medium that you're most comfortable with, because there's all kinds of options out there. Personally, I use like a Cintiq tablet with Photoshop. Most people hear Photoshop and they think about photography and like editing photos. And it's funny because I wouldn't know the first thing about editing a photo in Photoshop, but you can also in Photoshop pull up a canvas, just a blank canvas, and it's incredible what you can do with that. YouTube is an amazing resource. There's like some incredible artists on YouTube that will show you different tips and tricks and different styles, and you can learn like all kinds of stuff on there. So like I haven't ever had like an art class for Photoshop or anything. It's just kind of self-taught and a lot of Google, a lot of YouTube, a lot of like, okay, how do I do this? Or what's a shortcut for that? And it's just a lot of practice. So I would recommend you start with illustrating if that's what people are interested in, because that's the process that really it's a craft that just takes a lot of time, which I learned a lot through this project. Yeah. You know, and then like you said, as far as writing for kids too, it's hard because there's so many different routes that you can take. These days, like self-publishing actually is very possible, you know, and you know a lot more about that end of the process because you're the one that's dealt with like all the printing and the marketing and all of that side of things.
And I love Amazon so much right now.
Oh, so much.
I love them.
Yeah. They've been great.
Yeah, because once you have it, right, we had Darlene Swanson. Mm-hmm. They laid everything out.
They were our layout people.
And then John actually recommended me to Phil, who ran all the printing.
Yes.
Because these were printed here in the United States, like locally, which
Yep.
was awesome.
Yep.
And then Phil recommended me to Darlene, who did the layout.
Yeah.
And then helped with the
that.
Kindle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Really
cool.
And that was really helpful because, neither of us knew what the layout needed to be for the printer. So, with the self-publishing, it was like we needed the JPEGs for the illustrations, we needed the manuscript, we needed the layout person that was going to help us format the whole thing.
Yep.
We needed the printer, and then all the marketing and all the Amazon stuff that you've enjoyed so much.
Love them so much. Well, so through this journey, or kind of as we started the journey, you're like, hey, we're going to adopt.
Yeah.
And this will be a really cool way to help support that and fund that and fuel that.
Yep.
And then you're, as you're spending hundreds of hours on this book, you're going probably through hundreds of hours, if not more, to adopt. So talk about that journey, because it led you out of Colorado. And then talk about where you are now and how that's all come together.
Oh gosh, how long do you have?
As much as we need.
Yeah. I don't even know where to start. So my husband and I are high school sweethearts, and we met when we were 12 and 13. And even back then, we both talked about adoption. Like, adoption has just always been on our hearts since we were kids. And we've always known that it would be part of our family story before we ever started a family. So we got married at 19 and 20, took a couple years before we had kids, and then we started our family. And the pregnancies were pretty rough, but I was thankful we could do it. And after we had our youngest, she came early, and it was kind of scary. And it was like, okay, maybe we look into adoption for baby number 3, because it's been on our goal list for a while anyway. Like, we've always had a passion for this. So February, it was actually just like almost the same week that you had sent me the Fiverr illustrations, February 3rd, we just felt like it was time to start an adoption. So through a lot of prayer and consideration, we started our research on like, okay, where do we start with this process? We landed with an adoption agency here in Colorado called Nightlight Christian Adoptions. And they've been an amazing group to work with. They have a number of locations throughout the U.S. But we quickly realized as we started the process that certain states are way harder to adopt in than others because of just extra red tape, extra regulations. A lot of it is based off of like state policies that the adoption agencies have to abide by. And so it kind of opened this idea to us of like, okay, hypothetically, like this is crazy, but what if we're not supposed to live in Colorado to adopt? And so we had this like hypothetical conversation with our agent, and we were like, okay, what would this process look like? What would our to-do list look like and all the fees if we were to live in a different state? And she explained that because they had offices in 13 states, if we were to move to one of those states, we could hit pause on the adoption here in Colorado and just pick it back up where we left off in another state. We wouldn't lose the money we'd put down. We wouldn't lose the progress we'd made. And so we had a date night where we like pulled up the map of the U.S. and we circled the states that had a presence of Nightlight.
So it started with where they were.
Yep.
Right. Obviously. Okay.
Yep. So that was where it was like, okay, let's do some research here and see what this would actually look like. We both were born and raised like Greeley, Colorado. So everything and everyone we know and love.
Everything.
Is
Roots
here.
are here.
Is
Dream
here.
home
Everything.
here. Everything.
Everything.
Work is here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like you said, dream home. Like we adored our home. So it was just this, and like instead of New Year's resolutions, we ask the Lord for a word or a phrase for the year. And it's funny because that year, what I had heard from the Lord was radical obedience. And originally I thought it was this project that you had brought to the table, and it was like, all right, like this is amazing. I've been, with radical obedience in mind, I've been looking out for like a project that the Lord might lay on my heart. And then we were called to adopt, and it was like, okay, this is the radical obedience. And then we were called to like, we felt, when I say we were called, like we considered this whole journey very prayerfully and very much like it was completely led by the Spirit. And it was like, we just suddenly felt like Colorado was not meant to be home, at least not for this adoption. And so, long story short, we ended up, South Carolina was really on my husband's heart through some prayer time. He was like, I just feel like we have to check out South Carolina. And at the time, we'd never been. Like, neither of us had ever even visited the state. So we took a weekend. We flew there. We road tripped through. We had 3 nights there, and we just kind of prayed our way through the state just to figure out, like, okay, Lord, speak to us. Is there something here for us? And one of the towns that we stayed in was just one divine appointment after the next. We ended up at a church that we had like 5 different people, random strangers, come up to us and say things that it was like, how did they know? Like, we've been praying about that, or that was something that was really heavy on our hearts about this whole move. And it was like God had just prepared that whole weekend for us.
I remember when you came back from that.
Yes.
Like,
yeah. Because
here's where we're moving.
Yeah. We met like that next week, and you were like, hey, how's it going? And I was like, we're moving. Like, at this point, it would be disobedient to the Lord to not go, because he just started opening up so many doors for us. And so we spent last fall preparing for that, telling, kind of sharing it with family and really prayerfully considering like when to list the house. And cause we weren't going to be able to move without selling our dream home. So that was part of it. And it was just this incredible journey of learning how to let go of the comfort, and we really felt like the Lord had put on our hearts, like, do you want to hold on to all of your comfort and your stuff, or are you willing to look outside of yourself? And that's really what this adoption journey has been for us is, this is a mission that we are so passionate about and driven by. And, we know that our next baby is meant to be adopted, and that God knows who that child is and when we'll get to hold that baby. And, through that, it was just this like radical obedience of like surrendering all that we know and love, everyone we know and love, and saying, okay, Lord, here we go. So we moved in April to upstate South Carolina. So we've been there for 4.5 months, and this is our first trip back to Colorado since moving. So it's been crazy and emotional, and it's weird stepping back into it because it's like so much belonging is here, that we obviously don't feel there. So much history and community here that we don't have there yet. But I will say, like, the way God orchestrated all of it, I mean, down to like the cellars of our house out there, it was just, his fingerprints were all over it. And it was just undeniable that like we are where we are supposed to be, and we are loving it. We really are. It's just been an incredible journey. So this book really did start a lot of like the fundraising for the adoption. Because no matter what state you're in, adoption is not cheap. But there again, like God's hand has been in it completely. Every time we've had like another invoice come from the agency, he provides in a radical way. And part of that was the move, the selling of the house. Like a big chunk of that went to the adoption. And, this also has gone towards the adoption. And it's just been incredible to see him show up every way.
And then how's the adoption process?
So
where are you in the process?
Yes. Yeah. So we actually just finished the home study last week. Okay. Like right before coming out here, we sent out our like family adoption profile books to the adoption agencies around the U.S. and we finished the home study process. So we are officially considered match ready. So that means like at this point we're doing a domestic infant adoption. That's where we're paired with a birth mama. So a birth mama will come in and say, hey, I can't raise this baby, but what are my options? And they'll give her some like family profiles to look through for, hey, these are adoptive families that are approved and ready, and they've been through all of the background checks and the fingerprints and all the loops. And so at this point, we're just waiting for God to pair us with a birth mama, and we'll get a call whenever that happens. And then we set up like a video call to meet the birth mom.
So I was going to say, you'll meet mom, talk to mom. So mom's involved in the process, which isn't always the case.
No, it's not always the case.
Okay.
So nowadays, open adoption is really, really, honestly, like the agency that we're a part of actually requires open adoption.
If you're a Christian small business owner, you have to check out one of our sponsors, the Foundry Advisory. They are a Christian peer advisory community here in Northern Colorado and the Front Range that is designed to give you encouragement, support, and insight to grow your business with other like-minded Christian business owners. Not only are they a sponsor and a partner of this podcast, but I'm also a member of their community. Check them out at thefoundryadvisory.com. If you've got junk in your life or business that you need removed, reach out to one of our sponsors, Hulk Addicts. They are a full-service junk removal company, and they'll be able to take care of you at your home or your business to get rid of whatever you don't want. Check them out at hulkaddictsjunk.com. As a small business owner, one of the things we will always need to address is a space to run our business. If you're looking to do a small tenant finish, maybe even build a building from the ground up, you've got to reach out to one of our sponsors, Mendel Construction. They are a full-service commercial contractor that can take care of your business needs to build the space and place of your dreams to run your business. Check them out at mendelandcompany.com.
A lot of states really, really strongly encourage open adoption. A lot of studies have been shown that it's what's best for the child is to know right off the bat, like they are adopted. It's part of their identity. It's part of, they have two sets of parents, and that's part of who they are. And so in the process, we as the adoptive parents are required to be open for an open adoption, which we are. We're excited for the birth mama that we are paired with, and we're excited to walk this with her. But there's also the other end of respecting her and her privacy. There are birth parents that aren't interested in being a part of the process. And so it's all just a matter of you go case by case and you ask the birth mama, hey, you set the tone for this. What are you comfortable with?
Okay.
So she may be located in another state. So originally we meet her over video, and then, depending on what she's comfortable with, if she wants to meet in person before baby's born, that can happen. If she's like, hey, I just want you at the hospital day of birth, we can do that. But we're not done with the process even close. There's so much that comes after the baby's born too. So, at this point, it's just hurry up and wait. And we're just prayerfully covering the birth mama in prayers of safety and health, and that God would pair us when the time is right. And then we play it by ear, whatever she's comfortable with, wherever she's located, whatever we need to do to get to her, to finalize things, to cross state lines with the baby. It's a whole thing. So, wow. Yeah.
And that kind of happens at whatever pace that it happens. Right?
Yeah, because there's going to be a due date. So we could be paired with a birth mom 2 weeks out of her delivery date, and it's all right, we're heading to Kansas where the baby's going to be born, and we have to stay there until both states approve baby crossing state lines. So,
okay.
It may be that we end up being somewhere for a month at an Airbnb somewhere, just with the new baby, waiting before we can bring baby home. Sometimes it goes really quick. Every state is different with how long the birth mom has to change her mind, or how long she has before she signs papers. It's a whole process.
And is there a point after baby becomes adopted by you guys that does she step out of the picture? Is that still kind of determined by you guys on what kind of involvement? Or do they kind of cut that? So
what's considered by open adoption, that means that there is some kind of relationship with the birth mama as the child grows up. That's what open adoption means. It'll be like I said, it'll really depend on what she's comfortable with, but that'll be a conversation that we need to have with her, where we kind of set the tone of what we're comfortable with, what she's comfortable with. Some birth moms like to have monthly visits, and some are I don't even want to see pictures. It's just dependent on her situation, and we're ready to just respect whatever her wishes are with that. So, yeah.
Well, gosh, thanks so much for coming on. What a journey it's been.
Yeah,
in these 5 years, we were sitting there Saturday, and I speak to a lot of business people, and you always get a little nervous before you speak.
Yeah.
But I've never been so nervous. I don't know if you could tell or not.
No,
because I looked over and I'm like, do you want to read some of this with me?
You did say that,
all these kids they're sitting like this far away. You know, they're all circled up, and half the kids I know, half I don't. I'm like, okay, I'm getting ready to read this for the first time to a group of kids. I was nervous as heck.
Yeah.
But how was that? Just sitting there, seeing the kids, they're lining up, like doing autographs.
It was.
How was that for you?
It was so cool. Well, and especially because like I was in South Carolina when the books arrived for you, and so like you were sending me pictures, but I was like, I want to hold it. Like I just want to hold the book in my hands, and so I had yet to see it in kids' hands, and it was really cool. Like I loved being able to watch their faces, just study the illustrations and like take in the words and ask some questions, you know, and that was really cool. And you didn't you played it off very well. Like you did ask me if I wanted to read, and I could tell you were a little nervous, but it was like, no, you got this. And I think the way we did it was great. You read the words and I held up the book for the illustrations. Yeah. And so I had the opportunity to like watch their faces as you read. And it was really cool to see them, you know, like lean in the more intense parts and like show more interest in jiu-jitsu. Like I've already had a couple friends be like, hey, we're looking into jiu-jitsu because our friends our kids are asking questions about it, you know? And it's like, yes, that's incredible. I mean, it's an incredible tool for kids. And I think something like that to help a child's confidence can do wonders in their development and later on in life too, even if they're not being bullied. Like it's incredible. Like I really grew a respect for jiu-jitsu through this whole process too.
Because didn't you grapple Haley a little bit?
No, but you did. No, but
Who was it?
You did put a redhead on me. Allie, maybe. I don't remember her name. My first class, you were like, try to get her off of you. And
who was that? Who was that?
I put her in a choke. I was like, I think this is bad etiquette. I don't think I'm supposed to do this in the first class.
Was it Kylie?
Maybe.
She's not red hair though.
Redhead. It was one of my first classes. I came in with Nick. It was my first class because you taught me how to tie the belt around. And then you were like, all right, see if you can get her off of you. And I knew a little bit from when Nick had practiced on me. And so I ended up actually, like, she did tap out, but everybody was laughing like, oh, that's not what you're supposed to do.
That's not what you do. Don't do that.
I know. I was like, I think this was like bad jiu-jitsu etiquette or something, but it was like, you told me to get her off of me. So I did what I knew. But man, like it was really fun to take the classes and especially to learn like the submissions and the positions that are in the book. I appreciated knowing that because I knew where the hands needed to be on the illustrations and I knew what the posture and format needed to be. And it was important to me to have that, like have those details right. And I knew it was important to you too.
Yeah. Well, and I think we went kind of not rounds, but we went over and over kind of back and forth. How do we end the book? Right. So JJ learns jiu-jitsu. He can like take somebody out now. And then there's going to be this moment when he has to stand up for himself in the book. And we're like, what does he do? And I think, I believe the way we ended it is the pure essence of jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Because what he could have done and what he actually did were different. Yeah. And that just shows the power of that sport and that art, like for any kid at any age, grown-ups too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Yeah. And I love that the message was really stressed of like, you use your words first. And it's if that line is crossed, then you use what you know physically, and it's okay to defend. It's good to be that, that inner superhero that every kid has in them. They just need somebody to believe in them with that, and jiu-jitsu is an amazing tool to bring that inner superhero out for kids. But like you said, I think that was great because you had talked about like, well, do we put like a choke or something at the end of the book? And I'm like, I don't think that, especially in a school setting.
There's all these kids unconscious in the cafeteria or in Mike's room. And Mike's like, yes, JJ, you got this.
Yeah, we had this conversation of like, well, we have to realize this is a school setting and we don't want to be like encouraging violence in schools. And so like, how do we end this in a way that really shows like the inner strength and confidence of jiu-jitsu without any like, because you don't always need the physical contact, in many ways, especially for a child being bullied, if they just stand up and they show the confidence, they stand up with like a posture of like, hey, this isn't how you treat me.
Yeah, the more you learn, even into adults. Like I didn't start training till I was an adult. A couple people thought I did. I was like, I haven't trained as a kid. I got beat up as a kid. But the more you know, the less you want to use it. And just the more people know that you know it by the way you carry yourself. And that's huge for kids. I think a lot of parents come in, I've had them say this to me. Can I show me like a head kick or something? I'm like, I'm not showing you a head kick in here. Yeah. Show me how to choke. He needs to choke this kid out. Like we'll learn all that. But they get a month, 2 months, 3 months in, you just see them shift and change, and just the way they carry themselves. They don't, some of that just goes away.
Yeah.
And then some of the kids do have to put hands on kids, and you can do it in a way where other kids aren't getting injured.
Right.
And it's completely
but it's
warranted.
Enough.
It's enough.
It's enough that they're taken more seriously, you know? And I think that's something that I really love about jiu-jitsu is it is like people who don't know jiu-jitsu, even myself, like before Nick started coming here with you, you hear jiu-jitsu, and for somebody who doesn't know, like they think like Karate Kid. Oh, it's the same thing.
They do this jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
They do karate chops, air chops.
Yeah. And now it bothers me when people do that. I'm like, that's not jiu-jitsu, Yeah. Like there's no, it's not about kicking and punching. Like that's nothing. It's not even close. And so, as you study it, you definitely learn, like you gain a respect for it. And it's like, and I think you've even mentioned like, it's the nicest way you could ever have your butt kicked, because it
really is.
It really is. Yeah. But there's so much power in it. And for a child, whether it's a child being bullied or even a child who is a bully, I think this book shows both sides. It shows the bully the effect that their words have on a child.
Yes.
It shows the fear that a child feels in those moments. And like my prayer is that it helps children on both ends of the spectrum realize the negative effects of bullying and what it can do to a child physically, psychologically, mentally, emotionally. But also the power of what jiu-jitsu can do for a child, physically, mentally, emotionally, and intellectually. So,
well, thank you for journeying on this journey with me. Gosh. And I know you're going to have a lot more books.
I'm hoping so.
There's going to be more books. I know there will be. Yeah. We're going to wrap up the same way we wrap up every episode.
Yeah.
And with giving you no notice on what your statement that you're going to leave with the world, knowing that you like to think about things.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you want to leave with the world when you leave it?
Yeah, it's funny because I got here today and you're like, oh yeah, you pick your favorite color and you leave a quote about, what is it? What you want the world to,
what do you want to leave?
What do you want to leave when you leave the world? And I was like, you could have given me a little bit of heads up, Matt. And you're like, oh, I didn't? Yeah, so this is something that I think is just really like rooted in my heart for children, and a lot of what I stand for, like as a mom and as an advocate for children. And it's that I believe every child deserves to have at least one adult in their lives that's absolutely crazy about them. I think we really cannot do enough to advocate for children. And I think especially in today's world, children are growing up with so many more negative impacts and avenues of not just bullying, but just like so many different things that are being bombarded on them at young ages, pressure being put on them. And I think every child needs at least one adult that's just crazy about them, that just cheers them on and believes in them. And no matter what they tackle, they have that person behind them. Like, you've got this. You really can do this. Whether that's a parent or an uncle or an aunt or a grandparent, whoever you are, if you have a child in your life, be their biggest advocate and be there for them no matter what they're ready to embark on. And I just think that's been really powerful in my life. It's been powerful in my parenting. And I've seen the fruits of that in so many kids' lives around me who have a strong advocate for them. So,
Meg Chestnut, that's a wrap.
Thank you, Matt Shoup. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for tuning into this week's episode. Would you make sure to please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel here? And please share this episode with somebody whose life it will make better. Are you a faith-based father and you want to have the adventure of a lifetime with your son? You have to check out the father-son hike of a lifetime on the Camino de Santiago in Spain. June of 2025, I'm going to be taking a small group of fathers and sons over to Spain. We are going to spend 6 days, hike 70 miles, have some of Spain's most amazing cuisines, see some of the most beautiful places and spaces, but most importantly, spend time together bonding with our sons. If you're interested in this adventure, check out mattshoup.com. When you get to the website, click the Gentle Art of Leadership button and hover down to the father-son hike of a lifetime.